What is going on, guys? Styx here with the Token Minorities, bringing you my first ever draft analysis video. I mean, I've played in a couple different leagues by now. I've had some experience. I've gotten to know the format, but I've never actually been able to make a draft analysis video. Mostly because the leagues that I've been in, I don't really get to use my draft, and this is, quite frankly, looking like the first time I will be able to make it through a full season in a non-NU league and get to keep a team that I drafted from the start. So, I mean, I'm still looking to check that box off of my draft format experience sheet. But either way, I figured that it would be kind of fun, and so I decided that, you know what, let's just do it and see what happens. I mean, I might be awful at it, but I might be, well, at least I'll have fun doing it, and that's what matters, right? But anyway, so looking at just kind of the start of everything, I started off with the number 2 pick in the draft, and you guys saw the thumbnail, so you pretty much already know what my team is going to consist of. But with the number 2 pick, Johnny Risepool had the number 1 pick, and so we were talking about potential mons that we were going to pick, and this was before things got banned or we voted on bans, yada yada yada, that type of thing. And so Tapu Lele was a mon that we had allowed in the previous season, and so we were obviously going to vote on it again this season. And talking to Johnny, he really wasn't a fan of it. So with the number 2 pick, I was like, you know what? If Tapu Lele falls to number 2, even if it's not necessarily a mon that I know I can do well with, I feel like that's a mon that if it's available, you have to pick it up. So initially I was planning on picking up a Tapu Lele. However, we as the CPC did end up banning it, so Tapu Lele was not there. So when Johnny and I started talking about potential mons that we would grab with the number 1 and number 2 pick, he brought up that he would either grab Lando T or Tapu Koko, and I would either grab Tapu Koko or Celesteela. Tapu Koko obviously if he picked Lando, and then Celesteela if he did pick the Tapu Koko. So with his first overall pick, Johnny did end up picking the Celesteela, or not Celesteela, wow, that is the only one that didn't get picked between us two. Johnny did pick the Landorus Therian, which means that Tapu Koko fell to me and will be my first overall pick. Now, Tapu Koko is almost undeniably my favorite mon in the entire draft format. First of all, incredibly unique typing, which, I mean, it covers your electric type and your fairy type right off the bat and is a very, very, very good fairy, arguably the best fairy in the entire game, and given the relatively limited number of viable fairies that there are, grabbing one as good as Tapu Koko immediately is definitely something that I really like to do and would do more often. Well, if I played and drafted more, but Tapu Koko just, yeah, it's incredible typing, has one of the best speed stats in the entire draft format. 130 is a tier that's usually pretty difficult to fill out. You usually have to grab like Aerodactyl or Crobat or something, or like Excelgor, something like a lower tier in that speed tier in order to be able to fill that out so you don't have a speed gap up at the higher tiers, making your opponent prep accordingly with like choice scarfers and stuff like that. So grabbing a top tier 130 is also incredible, as well as in addition to the mixed attacking stats of Koko, being able to hit from the physical and special side, being able to set up, being able to be kind of a stall breaker with like Taunt, Roost, Nature's Madness. Tapu Koko can run a myriad of sets, and with its fairy typing early on, you are able to really free up your draft later to where you're not forced into a lower tier type of fairy in order to get that fairy typing, because that still is essential. I mean, getting that Fairy Dragon Steel core is something that I try to do. I'm not as experienced in drafting as many, actually probably most of the other people in the draft format, so I just kind of have to rely on the old cliches of like the Steel Fairy Dragon core, the Fire Water Grass core. You need to get an electric type, you need to get like an electric immunity, need a ground immunity, like all of these little like generic benchmarks that you want to hit with your draft that I believe actually Jolt laid out in his drafting with the elite analysis videos. I'm just kind of relying on that, and like, okay, I hit this check mark, okay, I need to check these off as I finish the draft. And Tapu Koko not only hit the mixed potential wall breaking on both sides, but it also hit the speed tier, the electric type, and the fairy typing. So Tapu Koko, my favorite mon in the draft format, and a very, very easy #1 choice that really opens up my draft later for mons that I would like to pick up or try out in different situations. At round 2, we do pick up the Salamence, and it was actually kind of funny because at first I was actually disappointed with the fact that I ended up with Salamence. So obviously with Tapu Koko, I have a fairy type, and dragon typings is one of those things where there are some solid mid-tier dragons, but it's really like you have high-tier dragons and you have low-tier dragons, at least from what I'm noticing. I mean, yeah, there are things like Druddigon, Flygon in the middle, that type of thing, where you can pick one up later, but you want a solid dragon along with Tapu Koko, like really just a fearsome one that can just pressure the things that Tapu Koko would like gone. I mean, I don't know necessarily the inherent synergy between Tapu Koko and Salamence, but in talking to multiple people, it sounded like the general consensus, and I have to agree, was if you grab Tapu Koko, you want a strong dragon with it. And I mean, from my perspective, just getting a strong dragon for the Fairy Dragon Steel Core just kind of makes sense. I mean, strong dragons are few and far between, and dragon is still one of the most terrifying types in the game. So I was looking at a myriad of different ones. I mean, my pipe dream pick that I would have liked at this spot was Garchomp, but I mean, let's be real, Garchomp barely made it out of the first round. In fact, I think it might have been the very last pick of the first round. Garchomp is just way too good. It was just kind of a, well, maybe the rest of the league will completely forget that Garchomp's a Pokemon, but nope, unfortunately picked in the first round. Then I was kind of thinking of like another pipe dream in Zygarde, as Zygarde Koko would be absolutely horrendous to go up against, but Zygarde got picked middle of the second round. I mean, rightly so. I mean, the dragons that I was kind of hoping for were dragons that shouldn't make it to me, but I was kind of hoping that they would end up by some magic. So unfortunately, Zygarde and Chomp didn't make it. And then I was kind of setting my eyes on Hydreigon, as that not only gives me a ground immunity, but also gives me a good dark type as well. So, well, a good dark type and a solid speed tier. So I was like, okay, Hydreigon usually doesn't go in the second round, so I think I will try to grab that with my pick. I mean, it might be a little bit early, but I do like the pairing of Koko and Hydreigon. And then Hydreigon got sniped 2 picks in front of me, so I was kind of like, ah, crap. Well, I still want a good dragon. Salamence is still on the board. Yes, that means that I will not be able to Z Koko, but you know what? Salamence is a good enough dragon with 130 base attack, 110 special attack, and 100 base speed. I mean, I can definitely work with this. It gets defog. It can be bulky if we need it to. So Salamence did end up being my round 2 pick, and while it wasn't necessarily what I wanted, I still like Salamence a lot, as it can potentially go defensive with Intimidate, running a physically defensive set. It can go both offenses. I mean, you can equally viably run Choice Band, Choice Specs with the Salamence. I mean, they're not necessarily stuff that you would particularly think of off the top of your head as you're usually going for like a Dragon Dance set or a Choice Scarfing set. But I still really like what Salamence can bring to the table, and this will be my first Z user. You might be wondering why I'm picking Salamence and not Koko, and I talked this out, but I'm kind of more of a cost-benefit type of guy. Like, Tapu Koko, in my eyes, is undeniably the better Z-Mon between the two. However, I would lose more by making Koko the Z-Mon over Salamence, as Salamence without Z-moves becomes much, much less of a threat. I mean, it becomes a significantly lesser threat than Salamence with Z-moves, whereas Tapu Koko, yes, it is less threatening without Z-moves, but at the same time, Tapu Koko is still a massive threat if it doesn't have access to it. So it's kind of a, Tapu Koko is still a massive threat without Z-moves, whereas Salamence would be a much lesser threat. So that is why Salamence ended up being my Z user, or my first Z user in this draft. Now, coming up, I obviously have my dragon or my fairy dragon part of the Fairy Dragon Steel Core. I have that finished up. Like, I have both of those. I have 2 very good mons, so I was kind of looking at a good steel type to pair with those 3 as having a high tier Fairy Dragon Steel Core would be something that's very appealing and something that I can definitely use. I'm also kind of looking for a rocker at this point, so I was trying to decide between what type of steel do I want, and obviously, I mean, steel and rocker generally goes together. I mean, there are a few steels that don't, but if you get a steel, you're gonna get a rocker, so I was trying to look at what type of steel did I want. I obviously wanted a defensive one, and so did I want one that could defog? Did I want one that could do dual hazards? Did I want one that could complete or start to complete another core on my team? And that is where I decided to go with my third round pick, which is Ferrothorn. Now, Ferrothorn is kind of one of those things where I was like, okay, I'm trying to decide between Ferrothorn and Skarmory because, okay, Tapu Koko and Salamence both technically can defog, but neither of them like to. Like, you would not want to rely on either of them as your primary defogger, as they both are much better if you allow them to be offensive, or in Salamance's case, if you need it, defensive with all 4 of their moves dedicated to what they are designed to do. However, Skarmory was very much a comfort pick for me, as I know a lot of players didn't like it, but I knew how to use Skarmory, I knew how to use it well, and so, I mean, I was definitely looking at that, but Ferrothorn, first of all, it completed my Fairy Steel Dragon core, which I've said for like the 17th time now, which is very strong, but also Ferrothorn grabbed me a Grass type, which is very important, as filling out a a Fire Water Grass core is something that I'm definitely trying to check off my list as well, and Ferrothorn fit perfectly in that slot, as it finished up my Steel Fairy Dragon and also started my Fire Water Grass, in addition to being a rocker, which I did not have at the time, with the option of spikes and being a very good wall. Now, something with Ferrothorn that I am 100% going to have to watch out for is the fact that everything can easily carry HP Fire. Like, they can see that I have a Ferrothorn that I will be relying on to wall this Pokemon on their team. They can easily just carry HP Fire to try to deal with that, or just some other sort of fire coverage. I mean, even non-stab still does a very good chunk to Ferrothorn, so something I'm definitely going to have to keep in the back of my mind. But Ferrothorn works as a phenomenal pivot, as a very good hazard setter. It can do Leech Seeds, it can lay up spikes, all that different stuff. It can force our opponent to prep the way that we want them to, and also just Ferrothorn is just a great mon in general. So yeah, grabbing that round 3 right before the potential Grasscade was also something I was looking for. Like, yes, it does not resist 1,000 arrows, but if you make it super defensively bulky, it can quote-unquote take on Zygarde, as Zygarde can easily run a set that can handle Ferrothorn, so that will be a hole that I'm looking to patch up later in the draft as well. But for the time being, Ferrothorn fits my team very well as a Steel type and a Grass type and a hazard setter, in addition to being a very bulky mon. So now that I have the Steel Dragon Fairy core filled out, and I'm starting to work on the Fire Water Grass core, I'm kind of looking at, okay, I can sort of start filling out some of the speed tiers that I need right here. So I have 130, I have 100, and I have LOL. In fact, in my draft little sheet that I had where I listed out all of the speed tiers and whatnot, I literally had LOL next to Ferrothorn's typing, as Ferrothorn does not have a speed stat. I mean, 20, it's good for gyro balls, not good for filling out speed tiers in a draft. So I was kind of like, okay, what do I need? I need like a 120, 110, anything below 100. So what am I looking for in my draft? And I've noticed my habit in drafting recently is to put off grabbing a ghost until the very end and really just relying on Rotom in order to be able to be that ghost and also be a ground immunity, and also Rotom also gets defogged this generation, but that's beside the point. Like, I find myself just putting off a ghost until the very end of the draft and usually getting one that's, I mean, Rotom's good, but it's not like a very good one. It's not one that you would like really want to use and one you would bring often. So I was like, I'm going to prioritize a Ghostmon a little bit earlier in this draft. Still need my Grounded Poison in order to in order to mitigate the toxic spikes that opponents can potentially bring against me. And if you guys are paying attention, you might be able to kind of see where I'm leading you. I'm looking for a ghost type that fills in one of the speed tiers that I don't have, kind of looking for a grounded poison at the same time, something that can absorb toxic spikes, but also something that can put a little bit of offensive pressure on my opponent's team. And so yes, you probably guessed it, my next pick for round 4 will end up being Gengar. So like I said, Gengar checks off many boxes in terms of what I need to grab in my draft. It fills out a speed tier I did not have at 110. It fills out a ghost type, and this time I have a high priority ghost type in order to not be stuck with Rotom again, even though I do love Rotom. I mean, I love me some Rotom, but I'm trying to change things up a little bit, get used to more mons. Gengar worked out wonderfully for that. I have a grounded poison in order to get rid of toxic spikes, and I have the potential for a special wall breaker, as Gengar's 130 base special attack is absolutely phenomenal. It can easily run multiple sets. Like, I mean, it can easily run Scarf, it can run Specs, it can run like Life Orb, it can run like a sub-disable set, which is even something. It can Will-O-Wisp, it can do quite a lot of different things. And so that's really what I'm looking for in Gengar, just to be able to pull all of those things off, just get something that starts to round out my draft that fits well with the other mons. And so I'm very much looking forward to trying out Gengar, as I was told by Maddie Brolick that Gengar is one of the best Scarfed Ghost in the format. I mean, he might have just said best Scarfers, but I'm gonna preface that by just saying I don't remember if he said Scarfed Ghosts or Scarfers in general, but either way, Gengar is a gigantic menace. It's been something that I've wanted to try out for a little while as well. I mean, I've seen it used. I've never had a priority on drafting it, as I usually try to grab like a Lottie or a Diancie in that 110 spot, but Gengar fills it out very nicely as well. And so definitely looking forward to trying out this monster. Like, definitely Gengar is going to be a huge monster for my opponents to try to deal with, and so I'm very excited to try that out. And also, I want to address the nickname, as I just have kind of skimmed over the nicknames. Actually, I haven't even acknowledged them, but Gengar is Jolt's Dreams, just because I always have to find a way to make fun of Jolt in every draft that I do. And so Gengar is going to be the designated make fun of Joltmon in this draft, and so I named Gengar Jolt's Dreams because Jolt's dreams are dead. I would put Jolt's dreams of winning a championship to be more specific, as because Jolt apparently has dreams outside of Pokemon. I mean, I can't believe he does that. Like, who actually has dreams outside of this game? I mean, that's absurd. That's crazy talk. There we go. Trying to channel my inner Dr. Cox right there. But yeah, so this would be Jolt's dreams of winning a championship, but that doesn't fit. So unfortunately, I did just have to stick with insinuating that all of Jolt's dreams are dead. So yeah, that is the pick up with Gengar, filling out the 110 speed tier, the grounded poison, and the ghost type. Now, as you can see, I have a single rocker out of my top 4 picks. So my priority for round 5 was grabbing another rocker, as it was something that obviously I needed. I didn't want to just have to bring rocks on Ferrothorn every single game. I mean, I still have to grab my ground type, which I mean, it inherently lends itself to another rocker, but I didn't want to be forced to either bring rocks on Ferrothorn or that ground type, as at this point I'm going to be getting a lower tier ground type. So I don't want to force myself to have to bring that every single game. I want to give myself a little bit of leniency in terms of my rockers, but I also was kind of looking at what else I needed to pick up with my team. I mean, I needed to start filling out some of the speed tiers below base 100, or I can start looking at that 120 speed tier, but I mean, I have an idea for that for later. So starting to look at some speed tiers below base 100. I'm gonna need some physical attackers, as well as with Gengar and Tapu Koko. I'm mostly special at this point, but then again, Tapu Koko and Mence are mixed, so I do want something that can hit a little bit harder physically, but also can be a rocker, can be a wall, as I'm mostly offensive at this point. And so something that I did notice that ended up working out very well and filling out a good number of the roles that I was looking for, ended up being Necrozma. Now, Necrozma is an interesting mon, in my opinion, as yes, I know I said I kind of wanted to go for a more physical attacker, but I mean, hey, it's got 107 base attacks, so I mean, that's something. But regardless, I still ended up grabbing another mixed attacker. I mean, I honestly would kind of rather have very good mixed attackers, in my opinion. I would rather have a couple good like physical or special attackers, but then have most of my other mons be mixed so that my opponent doesn't know exactly what I'm going to bring or what type of attacks they need to prep for. I like having the ability to switch between physical and special in a given matchup to kind of keep my opponent on their toes. And Necrozma filled out a good couple checkboxes for me. First of all, it was a bulky psychic, which was something that I didn't mention earlier, but was something that you really did want to deal with the likes of strong fighting types like Mega Medicham, Mega Gallade. I mean, granted, Mega Gallade does have knockoff, but to deal with some of the strong fighting types out there, you want a bulky psychic in order to be able to try to take those things on, where Necrozma is not only that, with the ability Prism Armor, which can reduce the damage from super effective hits. It's a rocker. It is a setup mon with like Rock Polish and Calm Mind. You can use it as a wall, as it gets access to two different but somehow exactly the same recovery moves in Moonlight and Morning Sun. Honestly, I don't know why they made those two different moves, as it's literally the exact same thing. I mean, I think the only difference is Morning Sun is normal and Moonlight is fairy. Like, that is literally the only difference that I can think of besides the name. But either way, does get access to recovery, gets access to setup, gets access to rocks. It can be a very solid wall where super effective hits just do a little bit less damage. It rounds out a good speed tier on my team, with 79 essentially acting as an 80 speed tier. So Necrozma fills out a good couple roles on my team, and was also a mon that, with the move tutors from Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, got quite a bit better with like knockoff, earth power, heat wave, stuff like that, to where Necrozma actually is more of a threat with different coverage moves. And so another mon that I've been wanting to try out, I just decided to grab it as it filled out my team nicely. And so now I have 2 rockers, I have 2 defoggers, I have what I want at this point. If you looked at my draft and told me this is what I would end up with after 5 rounds, while it might not necessarily have been what I wanted at the beginning, I would tell you, you know what, I'm okay with this. Like, I'm pleased with the draft that I have right now. But continuing with the draft at hand, I'm looking at what roles I need to start filling out. I'm thinking, okay, I have 1 core down, I have my bulky psychic, I have a lot of individual roles filled, but I still need to work on my cores a little bit more, particularly my Fire, Water, Grass core, which was something that I was definitely going to address in this go-around. So I was like, okay, need a good Fire or Water type. I also, looking at my team, I need a Dark type, as you need a Dark type in order to keep your opponent from just spamming Psychic against you, as Mono Psychic is something that's very terrifying, and you need a Dark type in order to be able to in order to keep your opponent from just doing that. So it's like, okay, need a Fire or Water and a Dark type. So I also could do with a little bit of momentum, as right now Tapu Koko is the only thing on my team that has really any momentum. Well, actually, it's the only thing on my team that has any momentum. And so I wanted to boost up my momentum a little bit, as I feel I play best with, I feel like Volturn is my best playstyle, and so I wanted to boost up my Volturn core a little bit more, grab a good Dark type, grab a good Fire or Water type, grab something that hits physically, as, yeah, my team is very special or mixed at this point, and that is where my next pick actually came in very handy, as it not only got a couple of those off the board, but was also something that got a boost from the move tutors in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and that mon is Incineroar. Incineroar was a mon that, yes, I know I've said this over and over again, but Incineroar was another mon that I wanted to really try out, well, particularly since Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon gave it a couple new toys to play with. Now, I did have it in I had it in CPC D League last season, but I only got to use it for a single game as I was brought up to Majors shortly after I used the draft, so I really wasn't able to use Incineroar that much. However, with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, it got two gigantic things. It got Knockoff and it got Intimidate. And also, I mean, it has U-turn, so that's pretty nice. But with both of those, Incineroar became pretty significantly better, as it can spam a stab knockoff, it can get momentum with U-turn, it can flare blitz, it can intimidate, so it takes less damage from physical threats, forcing them out to where you can get switch advantage with U-turn. So Incineroar was a pickup that, in my opinion, probably was a little bit early in terms of grabbing Incineroar, but for my draft, it actually worked out very, very nicely, as it filled out a speed tier, filled out the dark roll, filled out the fire roll, filled out another momentum gainer. And so I was like, you know what, it's a little bit early, but I think that Incineroar fits my team well enough that I can justify prioritizing it as early as I did, and also it's a physical attacker, so that's something that my team was starting to look to need a little bit more, and I should probably place a little bit more priority onto a physically attacking role as well. So Incineroar was my round 6 pickup. Definitely like that as a good fire type, as a good dark type. Easily spamming knockoff. Like I said, it can get momentum with U-turn, it can lower attacks with Intimidate, I can potentially shuffle those around if I need multiple attack reductions on certain mons that might be getting out of hand. Incineroar just covers those all very nicely. And yes, as a potential Scarfer, it's very slow, as it can't even outspeed base 115 mons if they are max invested. However, Incineroar is fast enough for certain matchups to where I definitely can justify running a Choice Scarf on it against certain teams, but also it's very bulky. Well, it's not very bulky, it's fairly bulky to where running an Assault Vest on it as well can help out with certain matchups. Oh, and it gets fake outs. I mean, that's a little bit of priority, which my team has absolutely zero of at this point. So yeah, Incineroar fills out all those roles nicely, and that's why I grabbed it with my round 6 pick. Now at round 7, I was starting to feel like, okay, I need to get a ground type, I need to get a water type. There are two very common ones that are both ground and water. I also needed another rocker, so yeah, 2 of those as well. Actually, there are 4 water grounds with Gastrodon, Quagsire, Swampert, and Seismitoad. I wanted another rocker so that I didn't have to force Necrozma or Ferrothorn to either be brought or to use them in every single matchup. So I was like, okay, that narrows it down to 2 of them. Seismitoad and Swampert are both very good, but it's just a matter of preference at this point. And the mon that I did end up deciding on is they both have their own stuff that makes them good. Swampert has physical water and special ice coverage and a little bit more bulk, whereas Seismitoad has knockoff speed and a potential water mode. But I decided that my team has enough offense. I need to go with a little bit more bulk in my pick this round, and that is why with my round 7 pick, I ended up grabbing Swampert. So Swampert is the next mon on my team that I actually have a little bit of experience using. I really don't count Incineroar, as that was literally for a single game. But Swampert is a mon that I had experience using in the PPL, and between it and Seismitoad, I have used both, and I actually prefer overall the extra bulk of Swampert as opposed to Seismitoad. So that's why I ended up going with this. Yes, I do lose out on the water immunity, but Swampert has the ability to phase, so that way Crocoon can't necessarily beat me. I also have ways of dealing with Crocoon in Tapu Koko and Ferrothorn potentially, whereas Ferrothorn's a little bit more of an iffy check to Crocoon, just because, I mean, with pressure and Power Whip going down very, very fast, Crocoon can beat Ferrothorn. So yeah, I still like Swampert in this case, as it's more bulky, it can more reliably get up rocks and take hits, and it's a mon that I felt somewhat comfortable using. I didn't want to just go with all mons that I wanted to try, or all mons that I hadn't used before. So Swampert was a good, like, you know what, it fits my draft nicely, and it's a mon that I have experience using. So yeah, that's why I liked having Swampert there, and also this kind of puts a choke on the potential hidden powers that my opponent can use or can go for, because you want hidden power grass for Swampert, you want hidden power fire for Ferrothorn, and you want hidden power ice for Salamence. So between those 4 mons, it forces our opponents into a little bit of a situation where they have to kind of guess as to what I'm bringing, as to what hidden power they are going to carry, and then depending on what hidden power they carry, I can go into the appropriate threat. So that's why I kind of wanted a ground water in this instance. Get a good water type, a good bulky water, but also get a good ground type out of it, to where our opponent can't just use our own electric terrain against us and spam electric moves. So with Swampert in that spot, it really doesn't fill out another speed tier, as you rarely respect Swampert's speed, and also it's just redundant with Incineroar. I was okay with that, as I really wanted the bulk more than anything, and the ability to get up rocks, phase things out, actually have an ice type attack that can hit dragons a little bit harder, that type of thing. So yeah, Swampert ended up fitting very nicely in that spot. Now, going into rounds 8 and 9, I was thinking of, okay, how am I going to round out my draft? I know that there is one pick in general that I would like as a kind of speed control, but it's a mon that only really goes well with Tapu Koko teams and is very, very, very unlikely to be picked up by anything else, so I can kind of save that for a last pick type of thing. And at this point, I'm also without a Mega, and you might have recalled a little bit earlier I said that I had plans for that 120 speed tier. Well, this is where it's starting to come into a little bit of fruition, as not only is my pick a 120 base speed, or right around that, it is also a Mega Pokemon and is a Mon that can get defog, give me momentum. I mean, just check off a bunch of different things that I liked as well. Oh, and it's a normal type. You already know what it is. My pick for round 8 is Mega Pidgeot. Mega Pidgeot, much like 99% of the other mons on this team, is a mon that I was really looking forward to using, as it's a mon that on paper has everything it needs to function very successfully, and seems to kind of just be a perfect mon for my type of playstyle. It's fast, has U-turn momentum, it has a move that's very easy to spam in Hurricane, and also I'm never going to miss a Hurricane with Mega Pidgeot. It has the ability to be an offensive defogger if I need it, and while Pidgeot has a total of like 8 or 9 different moves that I counted that it can realistically bring, it's still a mon that seems like a very good late pickup. I mean, it fills out a speed tier perfectly on my team. It's another ground immunity, as right now Salamence is my only ground immunity. It's a very hard-hitting attacker with a move that is very spammable, and with the confusion chance of Hurricane, that is very nice as well. It has the potential to be able to set up with Workup. While not the ideal setup move, it still can put our opponents in a very bad spot. And yeah, Mega Pidgeot just seems like it works out very, very well for my team, and is something that I'm excited to bring. I've been wanting to try it out for a little while, but usually I place a higher priority on the Megas that I grab. Like, I will try to pick up a Mega within the first couple picks of a draft, just because I really like the top tier Megas more so than the lower tier. However, I still definitely like the lower tier. I mean, Mega Aerodactyl, unfortunately people are starting to realize how good it is, so it's starting to get picked earlier and earlier, so I can't rely on that as a low tier pickup. But with this draft, I'm very pleased with the Mega Pidgeot in that spot. Fills out a good speed tier, good U-turner, another potential defogger. It's a normal type, so our opponent can't just spam ghost attacks against us. Has a very spammable move in Hurricane, hits very hard, and yeah, all of those things make Mega Pidgeot a very good pick in this spot of my team. Now, kind of rounding out my draft, I know what my last 2 picks are going to be, or I know what my last pick at this moment is going to be. It's going to be that mon that I mentioned for speed control, to take advantage of Tapu Koko on my team, and it's not going to be picked up by anything else because it only really works, like I said, with the aforementioned Tapu Koko. So I've got a little bit of time to pick up that mon, and I'm thinking, okay, what speed tier am I missing? What else am I missing on my team? I'm missing a good fighting type. I'm missing some solid priority. So those are 2 things that I definitely would like to address with this pick. And My next pick not only fills out the last speed tier that I was looking for, the base 90, it has priority out the wazoo. It's a fighting type. You guys already know what mon I am talking about. That mon is Lucario. Lucario has been one of my favorite mons since I got into the game, truly in Gen 4. I mean, obviously I played like Fire Red and stuff like that, but I didn't start playing competitively until Gen 4, and that was where Lucario really caught my eye. I mean, it's able to attack physically and specially, both with this about the same viability. It has more priority than you could possibly want. I mean, well, not more priority. I mean, it has Bullet Punch, Extreme Speed, Vacuum Wave. It has both types of priority, physical and special. Has a very good speed tier in 90 for being able to round out what I needed on my team. And just, it's a setup mon, it's a potential Scarfer, it has great priority. It also deters Dark Spam, which is something that my team struggles a little bit with. I mean, I do have resists in Incineroar and Tapu Koko, but neither of them like getting knocked off, especially since Tapu Koko will not be my Z-Mon. It does not like getting knocked off. So Lucario deters the Dark Spam a little bit as well, in addition to being a very strong fighting presence with setup and priority. Really just all of those boxes that I wanted to fill out with Lucario. He fit perfectly, so very, very glad to be able to grab Lucario in this spot. It's not a mon that I've seen get drafted all that much, but it's a mon that even though it doesn't get drafted as much as it could be, it's still a mon that is a huge threat, and people acknowledge its presence and people acknowledge its potential, just not necessarily a mon that fits in every single type of draft. So it really needs a specific type of draft for Lucario to be able to fit in and shine. It just so happened that my draft was the perfect situation in order for Lucario to come in and potentially make a splash. So now, winding down in my draft, I mean, I'm running out of points. I have about 7 left at this point, and the mon that I have been alluding to the entire time is a 6-pointer, so I figure, you know what, screw it, it's time to grab that mon. It's a mon that takes advantage of Tapu Koko's Electric Surge. It has the ability, well, it's a speed control type of mon. It hits very hard. It can potentially just sweep teams. It can outspeed actually it can outspeed almost all common Scarfers, but with just minimal investment when it is under the electric terrain, and that is my low tier pickup in Alolan Raichu. So as you can probably see, in this draft, I placed 0 priority on picking up Hawlucha, which is something that you normally see with Tapu Koko. In fact, Tapu Koko Hawlucha is somewhat considered the best pairing of Tapu plus Hawlucha in the game. But I placed almost no emphasis on it, just because first of all, Hawlucha, I wanted Tapu Koko. I grabbed that first thing that I could. Hawlucha is a mon that works best with Tapus. So considering I already had one and there were only 2 others available, there were only 2 other teams that I really needed to worry about Hawlucha realistically getting sniped. As it turned out, it was actually taken by a team that didn't have a Tapu, but at the time I really wasn't all that worried about it. As while Hawlucha is very, very, very good and is a gigantic threat, I will never say anything otherwise, I knew that, okay, if I place minimal priority on Hawlucha and it's available later in the draft, then you know what, screw it. I will go ahead and grab it then. But I wanted to grab the other mons that I did, because in a situation like this, I knew that I still had a mon that could have easy double speed in the electric terrain in Alolan Raichu as a almost guaranteed late round pickup, as almost nobody else would draft Alolan Raichu, as it's very frail. I mean, they could do it as a kind of Tapu Koko team countermeasure, which was something that I was thinking of, but I figured that, okay, Alolan Raichu, very, very, very unlikely to be picked up by anybody else in the draft. It is redundant with the electric typing and the psychic typing that I already have on my team, but it works out well, works as very solid speed control. It can hit somewhat hard with that base 95 attack. It's also my second Z user, so having Z Alolan Raichu in the terrain is very, very threatening, and in certain matchups can just win if your opponent doesn't have any way to outspeed a Alolan Raichu. If you have the electric terrain up, you can afford to run a special attack boosting nature, you can have a Z move, so Alolan Raichu can clean up games very easily as another potential Volt switcher for momentum. Really, really like this pick, and though Hawlucha was sniped, well, quote-unquote sniped, I can't really say it if I placed no priority on it, but even though Hawlucha was taken before I was able to potentially grab it, I am very happy with still being able to have a Alolan Raichu in this spot, and I'm looking forward to having the combination of Raichu and Koko once again for certain matchups. So that being said, my draft is pretty much finished. All I have is a single point left, and you don't try to fill out a role in your draft with a single point mon. I mean, you can, and there are things that you can, like if you want like a hazard stacker, you can get like Venipede, you can grab like Dwebble, which is a mascot pick. I could also grab Why Not, which I really considered. In fact, Why Not was going to be my final pick in this draft until I noticed that this last mon was a single point and I couldn't not grab it. And that mon at the very end of my draft is Gothorita. Normally, I wouldn't even have looked twice at Gothorita. I would have taken my mascot pick and Why Not and just ran with it. But seeing my boy Crobat for the win, Danza, use it effectively in the NPL just kind of gave me the inspiration, like, you know what, I have a point. Gothorita is still available. Screw it, let's go ahead and grab it and see what happens. So, I mean, yes, this is the third Psychic type on my team. I wasn't going for any type of synergy with this last pick. I wasn't looking like, okay, I have multiple Psychics on this team. I was like, you know what, no. There is a mon that is 1 point. I'm going to bring it maybe one time all season. I want it to be a mon that can be a very niche pick, that can do one thing and do that one thing very, very well if I need it. And being able to trap and take out something was incredible for this pick. Like, just being able to grab Gothorita. Gothorita should not be 1 point. We're going to have to look at that in the future. But I really did like the fact that this mon was available with my last pick in this draft. Just be able to have a matchup where I'm like, you know what, I'd really like to get rid of this thing. Gothorita can take hits from it and eliminate it. So very excited to have Gothorita as the last pick in my draft. Not going to bring it a whole lot, but I can bring it in matchups, like I said, where they have a threat that I would really just like to trap and eliminate. So yeah, that being said, that is my draft, guys. Looking at it, I mean, it's not perfect, has some flaws, but I really do think that it's a draft that I can use successfully. There are a lot of mons that I've been wanting to use for a while that I'm very excited to use, and as always, I have my Tapu Koko, which is my favorite mon. So if I have Tapu Koko, I'm happy, and that's ultimately what matters. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and this is Styx signing out. Why not? See you guys.